The last used raw material in a completely natural process is the watertight container for all the others, wood. The process is brewing, and this oak barrel contains 36 gallons of a naturally conditioned Yorkshire beer from Samuel Smith. Old Brewery Bitter in cask is a real ale that takes its name from the small independent family brewery where it is produced. It embodies all that is best in the history, craft, and traditions associated with beer brewed at the oldest brewery in Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, time moves slowly. A team of drays crosses the river bridge into the famous old brewing town of Tadcaster, 8 miles from York.
This is York. The train arriving on platform 9 is 10:14 from London King.
The historic city of York is the capital of Yorkshire, and this train is carrying a special passenger, a Yorkshireman whose life's work is delving into the mysteries of beer. His name is Michael Jackson.
How you doing? Good to see you.
As the guest of Samuel Smith, he's on a sentimental journey back home. As Michael has said, when images of the city of York enter the mind's eye, they're usually accompanied by waves of nostalgia. Not so long ago, a Londoner would have had to travel 200 miles north to be sure of getting a pint of beer from Yorkshire's oldest brewery. Not so today. Its beers are known and available throughout the world, as Michael Jackson can testify.
I had a few pints of your beer in the Cheshire Cheese.
The reason for Michael's visit is to renew acquaintance with Tadcaster, its famous old brewery and its beers. Michael Jackson is a writer on beer. He's internationally recognized as one of the leading authorities on the beers of the world. His writings appear regularly in the United States in the columns of Playboy, Food and Wine, Travel and Leisure, and other specialist publications. His book, The World Guide to Beer, is a standard work. Michael tastes and tipples professionally. Today, Journey's End is the extraordinary little brewing town of Tadcaster. On his arrival at Samuel Smith's old brewery, he's welcomed by the brewmaster, Alistair Ross.
Hello, Michael. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Where have you been?
Oh, all over the place, you know, in Belgium, Germany, of course, in the United States, lecturing in New York, Chicago, San Francisco. Last week I was in Britain.
Really?
Yeah, tasting some of the beers down at the Great British Beer Festival, you know, the draft beers they have there.
Tadcaster water, liquor the brewer calls it, is still drawn from the original well sunk in 1758. From the well, the liquor is pumped to the top of the brewery tower to descend by gravity, floor by floor, mixing with other ingredients as it goes to end back below ground in the cellars, converted to beer. Michael's first point of call was a visit to the cellar bar underneath the brewery and a tasting session. The water at Tadcaster is especially suitable for the production of pale ales, a term used to describe bottled beers that are translucent and reddish in colour, in comparison with brown ales, black porters, and stouts.
That looks pretty good. Nice dense head, copper colour, rich copper colour. Lovely fruity aroma.
While most breweries nowadays produce only one style of beer in large modern factories, beers from the old brewery are brewed traditionally and naturally to give old-fashioned flavour. Each one has its own distinctive taste, and a complete range is available in the United States through Merchant Duvan Corporation, sole agents. Beers to be savoured. One important ingredient is barley, required by the brewer in the form of malt. At the old brewery, the outer husk of the malted grain is cracked by milling. Starch is the most important component of the barley grain. Malting makes it easier to convert the barley starch into soluble sugars, suitable for fermentation. The crushed grain, which the brewer calls grist, is transferred to grist cases on the floor below. There, in large copper vessels called mash tuns, an important encounter takes place. Dry grist and hot liquor come together. First to enter the mash tuns is the liquor, the original well water, heated to a temperature of around 70 degrees Celsius. A valve is opened and the grist, in the form of slurry, pours into the liquor for mashing to begin. Mashing converts the starch in the grain into sugars, which dissolve in turn into the liquor. The liquor is no longer plain liquor. From now on it's referred to as wort. After 5 hours, the last of the wort is strained through the mash tun bottom to descend another floor for the next stage in the process. The wort is boiled up in copper vessels, literally called coppers, and a new ingredient is added, hops. A rub reveals their oiliness. They will give bitterness and flavor to the beer, and a unique aroma. It's the green flowers of the female hop that are used by the brewer. He blends them and weighs them and adds them in measured amounts to the boiling wort in the coppers. After boiling for an hour and a half, the hopped wort is cooled. Then another drop. The cycle of converting starch to alcohol reaches its climax with fermentation. The old brewery still ferments its beers in traditional Yorkshire stone squares, roofed fermenting vessels made of solid blocks of slate. Critical temperatures during the process are controlled by copper pipes inside each vessel, through which chilled well water passes. Cooled wort runs into a square. When it is filled, fermentation will begin by adding yeast. It is this fermentation in Yorkshire squares that gives Samuel Smith's beer its full-bodied character. The yeast at the old brewery hasn't changed since the turn of the century. One of the oldest unchanged strains in the country, still as healthy and active as ever. Rousing, as it is known, encourages the yeast to be even more active. It will multiply itself 5 times over as it converts the sugar in the wort into alcohol and carbon dioxide, which is given off. After about 5 days, fermentation will be stopped and the rich, creamy head skimmed off. The wort is no longer wort now, it has changed again, this time to beer. 36 gallons at a time, old brewery bitter is racked into casks. A shive is knocked in, and another barrel is ready for the walk to storage and the cask store. Character is doubly bred in Samuel Smith's naturally conditioned draught and bottled ales, beers with an aftertaste of Yorkshire. The old brewery is steeped in tradition and captured in every bottle it exports. It's one thing for a brewery to have lots of different labels, quite another matter for it to have a wide range of distinctive products, all with the authentic taste of Yorkshire, ready for export. This is how the taste of Yorkshire looks when a container consignment is bottled and ready to travel to the United States.
The pale ale is a pretty tasty beer, but what a contrast the celebrated oatmeal stout is, with this real dark, profound, rich colour, that lovely, slightly coffee-ish aroma, and a rich, profound taste as well. It's a really silky, smooth beer. It's the sort of beer that I'd regard as a sipping beer. I want to actually have one on my own. I think I like to keep it to myself. You know, each of these beers, each of the styles has its own moment for me, really. I think the old brewery pale ale, that's the most sociable beer. It's a beer to drink with friends.
Indeed.
And it's very good with food as well. I think particularly with the sorts of foods you drink with the red wine, you know, particularly red meat and grills. If I were having something spicier, like chili, then I think I'd go for the nut brown ale.
That's interesting.
Porter and oysters, I mean, that's just such a famous combination.
Yes.
the famous Taddy Porter and half a dozen oysters on the half shell, or maybe a dozen oysters on the half shell. I don't know why they go so well together, but
They certainly do.
They really do. And I think Imperial Stout, that's the beer to go with a book at bedtime. A wonderful nightcap.
You certainly have a remarkable knowledge of our beers.
I'd enjoy every minute of it.
The old brewery is keeping alive the ancient traditions of brewing and also preserving many of the old craft skills. The Coopers is one. Men of wood, men of iron. A feature of the old brewery today is the number of craftsmen whose skills have been handed down from father to son, from generation to generation. Who better to test a true Yorkshire beer produced in the old-fashioned way than Michael Jackson?
Hello, Mike. Here's one for you to try.
Sam's Imperial Stout. Absolutely one of my favourites. Lovely, lovely stout, the Imperial Stout. It's got such a depth of fruitiness, almost a burnt fruitiness. It reminds me rather of the burnt fruitiness in Christmas cake, you know. It's a real celebration stout.
Well, in that case, let's celebrate your return to Yorkshire.
Well, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Actually, Alistair, I'm taking a bit of Yorkshire home with me.
There's nothing more memorable, as visitors to Tadcaster will tell you, than the sight of a pair of Shire horses decorated with brass pulling a load-and dray of good Yorkshire beer to a village pub. Spirits rise at the prospect. Another taste of Yorkshire, and Michael Jackson's choice of some of the best beer in the world.